So you notice every time I make a new video, I show you guys how to set your project again, because that's something you have to be in the habit of doing, right? Later classes with other teachers are really going to want you to work with projects. Technically, if you're never switching computers, you don't really have to work with a project because everything knows where to point, and it's not moving. But when you start to be in an environment or moving your stuff around to different computers, setting projects and creating projects can be super useful. Because remember, it creates that little self-contained kind of environment, right, where everything knows where it's at and it knows how to find it and load it in. So file, set project, right? And we'll pick project 2, hit set, there we go. And then of course we can go file, open scene. And there's our lamp, right? Project 2. Remember, you want to follow these naming conventions also, right? Because that's important to get in the habit of doing as well, right? It's part of your actual grades, a small part, but a part of it. And you're going to be using naming conventions when you work with studios and on big projects with people. So we'll hit open. Don't save that because we just want it to open up. There we go. And there's our light bulb. Now in this case, we want to work with both the light bulb. We want to see the light bulb and the lamp itself. So remember, left click on that, and then shift, because shift adds, left click on that one. And you notice when you have multiple objects selected, you'll see green and white wireframes. So when you see green and white wireframes, don't freak out. That's normal, right? That's just indicating you have multiple objects selected. Now remember, there's that little kind of guy right here, blue kind of dotted box, white cursor. And you guys notice how I repeat a lot of this stuff in the videos? Because part of it's like repetition. I don't want you to have to keep going back and watching every video again and again to pick up those things. So a lot of the everyday useful things I'll try to repeat a lot, and particularly in the earlier videos, just so you guys really get that down. So we just click on that, because remember, that's isolate select. And what that does is it's on, because see the blue highlighted, it just shows what's currently selected. If I click off, click on it again, it turns it off, and you see everything's back, right? So there we go. Now in this case, I'm going to just click on the light bulb and hit F. Remember, F is frame selection, really useful. Kind of zooms in and sets your camera rotator moment selected. Now what we want to do now is really we want to build the brace and the spokes, right? That's really what we want to do in this video, and then we'll save like the cord and the little kind of turn switch for next week's videos, as well as doing the room. So the room will be one of the easier projects we do. So what I want to do now is, believe it or not, until I get to the spokes and the very tip top of the brace, I'm not going to show you anything new. I'm actually going to talk about symmetry again. We're going to use smooth preview. We're going to do some extruding. We're going to do some combining. We're going to do some edit mesh duplicate faces, right? I am going to show you the bridge for the first time today, and I'm also going to show you guys how to use edit pivot and duplicate special. So there will be a couple of new things on this video, but there will also be a lot of old stuff, right? So in this case, focusing on light bulb is good, right? F, just because it sets the focus more on the top of the lamp here. And what I want to do is I really want to kind of take these polygons right here on the right here to start our brace off, right? Now technically you could always make a separate cylinder, scale it down, move it into position, delete the tops and bottoms, or there's always more than one way to do something, right? But basically, what I want to do in this case is I want to get you guys practice with duplicate faces, right? Also, it already gives us a lot of shape we need and the position we need. So I'm going to hold down right mouse button, right? Because remember that holding down right mouse button over the object brings up your mark menu, these selection types. I want to go to faces, right? Face. Now in this case, pick marquee is going to be fine, right? We can just left click drag a small little box. So that'll select all of those, right? Now that's perfectly fine. If you wanted to, though, just to show this to you, and I'll talk about more as we go along too, in later projects, but if you select the face, and then you shift, double left click on the face next to it, you can actually select the face loop. And depending on the direction you do it in, right? So if I shift double click on this face, it selects a face loop that way. So can you just do a quick small little box select to grab those? Yeah. If you want to, though, you can select the face and then shift double click on the face next to it, and it selects a face loop around in that direction. So kind of neat to know that you can do face loop selection pretty easily in Maya, just like you can do edge loop selection. You just have to select two faces to let it know which direction to go in. Select the face, then shift double left click. But in this case, because it's a large area, just left click drag a small little box. Pick marquee will do it well also. So we just want to select those faces right there. What I want to do is I want to copy just those faces. Now we've seen both edit duplicate, which is for whole objects, and we'll see duplicate special today. But we've also seen in the edit mesh menu duplicate here. The edit mesh duplicate, and we're going to see edit mesh duplicate a couple more times this semester as well, so that's not a one-off. You're going to see it some more. Edit mesh duplicate copies specific polygons off an existing object. So if you want to copy a whole object, edit duplicate. If you want to copy just some specific polygons, edit mesh menu, duplicate. So I click on that, and you'll notice it actually brings up kind of that manipulator that's aligned to the normal direction, right? So I grab the blue arrow, you see how all these faces kind of move out the way they're pointing. That's your normal direction. In this case, I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Q, because Q is our quick key for our regular selection tool, and that's a great way to turn off whatever tool you're in. Now, I'm going to make sure I'm in object mode, because you see how technically it still thinks we're in face mode. So I'm going to hold down right mouse button. I'm going to go to object to make sure it knows we're in object mode. And you'll see that there's actually two objects here. Now, if you're having a hard time selecting both, or selecting this one, just left click drag to select both of them. And then you can hold down Control, left click to just deselect what you don't want, right? So this actually copies this off, right, into its own object. Now you'll notice when I hit W for move, see how my selection tool is not, and my manipulator tool is not on the center of the object? That's because this was copied off of the original lamp, and the original lamp center was here. So particularly when you do things like booleans or edit mesh duplicate or extract or even combine separate, you do have to be aware that your manipulator might be centered somewhere else. So remember, modify center pivot, and I believe I've already shown this to you guys as well. Once again, it's useful, right? So modify center pivot, and that centers your manipulator back on the object itself. And of course F for frame selection, because that'll set our camera zoom and our camera rotate around this part. And that's useful because we want our selection tool to be right in the center of the object. It's a little tall, right? And remember, if you're having a hard time selecting after you duplicate it, right, just select everything in that area, and then Control to deselect what you don't want, so it leaves only this. And you'll notice that this is its own object, but the original is still there. And I just Control Z to undo that. I'm going to turn R on for scale, right? Scale tool R. In this case, I just want it to be not tall, right? Not as tall. So I grab the green, right? Left click grab on the green, which is your y-axis, and drag this down. And now you see we have a much thinner kind of piece here. I'm going to hit W to move it up a little bit because I want it to be a little higher as well. But it's a great way to get that nice little piece right off of there. It already fits. We just had to change the size and the y-axis a little bit. It's already in the right position. But really, technically, that could just be a cylinder primitive where you delete the tops and bottoms. So I would prefer you do it this way so you get more practice with edit mesh duplicate. But technically, you just create a cylinder, right? And then just delete the top and bottom triangles, and you'll have the same thing. Now, in this case, this is paper thin, right? We want it to have thickness. We've seen this before. Guess what? We're going to see it many more times this semester also. Thickening things is quite useful. So even though we're seeing more new things, we're also just coming back to kind of tried and true stuff. So there's going to be a lot of natural reinforcement of our modeling tools and these ideas on a lot of our projects. There's always going to be some new stuff to learn, and some of it's going to be very specific to that project, but most of the time, a lot of what we're going to be using is stuff we're going to use again and again because it's always really useful. So in this case, remember, to thicken things properly, there is no direct thicken tool in Maya. It's hidden inside the extrude tool. The way it knows to thicken is by being in object mode, right? The moment you go and you select, say, just a couple of faces here, right? And I just do an extrusion, you'll notice it's just doing a regular extrusion. It's not doing thicken, right? So generally, back to object mode, right? So make sure you're in object mode. Hold down right mouse button, object mode. Generally, you want to be in object mode so that Maya sees that every face is selected, and that lets it know that when you use the extrude tool to thicken instead of do a regular extrusion. So the reason why extrude does thicken is that all the faces are selected. And there's code in Maya that lets it know every face is selected. I'm 99% sure you want to thicken, which that's a really, really sound and safe assumption. So we go to extrude, And remember, I was telling you guys that like 70% of the time, moving along normal direction kind of is annoying. This is one of those instances when we thicken stuff that it's not. It's awesome, right? And we'll see a couple more instances on some of the other modeling we're going to do this semester as well. But remember, this default thicken manipulator, you'll notice that this manipulator, particularly the blue arrow, is lined up to this face's direction. And you can imagine there's invisible ones for all the face directions pointing the way where they're pointing. Remember, that's just what normal direction is. It's where a face is pointing, right? So if I left click drag on this blue arrow, you'll notice that each face is moving along its own direction. A lot of the times that's actually annoying, right? If we were using that in the light bulb, it would have made the bottom of this light bulb get thicker and thicker, which is annoying. So we just switched to regular move tool, moving straight down. But in the case of thicken, it's awesome, right? It's exactly what we want. So now this has thickness. Yay. Of course, I can hit Q to turn the thicken tool off. I'm going to go back to object mode, right? So we're on object level. Now, in this case, I want this to have some nice rounded curvature, right? F for frame selection just to zoom it in. So I'm going to hit 3, right? We saw this in our last video for light bulb. 1 is low res, 3 is smooth preview, or your subdivisional surface, your sub Ds. So 1's low res, 3 is smooth preview. We want to be in smooth preview for this, so we hit 3. Remember, it's toggle, turn it off. Now, in this case, this is the kind of the metal, sometimes it's plastic, that kind of comes up above the light bulb to hold the lampshade on, right? So this is going to have 2 symmetrical arms, 2 arms that are identical. So remember how we've dabbled with symmetry already a little bit? We showed it on our railing for our bed, right? And this is important that you kind of have your, remember, when you did your lamp, right? If you made your lamp and there's a bunch of triangles and a bunch of n-gons, you did it wrong, right? Remember, you actually ended up, not using the polygons and the general quad method, right? So, guys, watch these videos, follow every freaking step I do, and then you're not likely going to have any problems, right? So those are the settings that you should have used for Evolve, and that will give you a nice mesh here. So when you make this, you'll have edge loops right down the center that'll work well with the symmetry tool. All right. If for whatever reason you don't, then maybe don't use a duplicate face. Create a cylinder that's even numbers, like 12 or 16 or something like that. Not 10. 10 would kind of, it's an even number, but it divides in half to 5, which is not an even number. So the safer ones are even numbers that divide by 2 into an even number. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. That's both even numbers. If you need that. You probably won't if you did the revolve and the output polygons exactly what I did. So what we want to do is we're going to turn symmetry on, right? Remember, it's over here in modeling toolkit, symmetry. It's actually also right here as well. But I can click on the little triangle for symmetry. And in this case, I want to do it on the x-axis so that this side will be the handles. So we'll go to world X. There we go. And now if I hold down my right mouse button over the object that I want to work with, this one, you'll notice it's now symmetrical. But you'll notice the symmetry is here, right? So when I turn symmetry on, we don't want to grab that and then say, oh, it should do the other side. It won't, right? So when we picked x-axis, that doesn't mean we select these two. It means we go over to here to select those two. And notice how we're making sure they're kind of lined up with the world axis. If you hit W and you see that kind of the manipulator is right in the center, and it looks like it's perfectly perpendicular with it, you're in good shape. So both sides are kind of mirror images of each other in exactly the same place. So remember, that's what's great about symmetry, right? Is it really gives you the ability to kind of turn that on and kind of adjust it. Now, at this point, and remember, you see that it's doing this way. Remember, we want 4 total, right? So don't grab those 2. If you only have 2 selected, you're doing it wrong, right? You won't have stuff on the other side. So we wanted 4 on this side. And guess how we're going to make this? Because this is just one giant piece of metal. We're going to extrude. Now, once again, you'll notice that, particularly in low res, these faces are not coplanar, right? So they have their own normal direction. So if we grab this blue arrow, you see how they get bigger? That's why we don't like to use the normal direction, right? So we'll just hit W for our regular move tool, and we'll just move it out along just the red axis, right? The x-axis. That's a little thick, so I'll hit R for scale it in a little bit. And then we'll do another extrusion, hit W for move it out. Now at this point, we want it to start to bend up a little bit, right? This is just like the railing we did on our bed. So we hit E for rotate, and we're going to grab, in this case, the dark blue handle, right? Because the light blue one is actually a view rotate. We don't need that in this instance. So we'll grab that one to kind of rotate it this way. So kind of these polygons kind of look like they're facing that way. We'll do extrusion again, W for move. Now remember, you can just move it up on the green and the red, but this dark blue guy is actually going to move both. So you might actually find that that makes certain manipulations a little faster and easier. You don't have to, right? You can do this manually, but it does take a little longer. So take advantage of these little squares. They'll kind of do it the two axes that it's kind of parallel with. So I'll hit E for rotate again, because remember, it isn't enough to just extrude, right? We need to bend the shape so that it's kind of bending to follow the contour, right? If I just kind of left that the way it is, or even rotate it like that back to being flat and I extruded and moved up, so it gets super thin. We don't want that. This shape needs to bend with it, so we need to rotate to bend also. Let extrude, then we'll move this up. E for rotate again. And you see how this is just keeping the shape and volume a lot better? So we can extrude again, move it up. Extrude again, move it up. I'm not doing a million extrusions, but enough to keep shape here. Extrude again. Now in this case, I want to start to move it back in a little bit. And then I'll hit E for rotate, rotate a little bit on the Z-axis, extrude, W for move. Remember, you can use these handles by themselves, but this square will make it so that it moves two at the same time. That can speed things up a bit. E for rotate a little bit, extrude, W for move. And we'll go about there because we're going to put another piece here in a minute. But you notice how easy it was to get this nice clean shape that's keeping its overall volumes pretty well just with the extrusion tool. But we did use move and rotate to create the shape, right? Particularly rotation was useful. We wanted the bend to look nicer, right? We rotate it so this bend looks better and cleaner, doesn't get too thin. And of course, we turned our symmetry on, right? So that gives us the ability to symmetrically work, which is great. But once again, really, smooth preview we're new to, right? And you hit 1, it looks a little crappy, right? But we're going to smooth it eventually, right? So symmetry, great. We're getting more practice at that. We're getting more practice smooth preview, and even just moving and rotating for shaping, and more extruding. But you wouldn't think to be able to duplicate these faces off and then extrude this to create this brace, but you can. Now in this case, I need another piece up here that I want to be a nice cylindrical shape also, to kind of be the top part. Creating a cylinder is not going to be that easy with this. So what I need to do is I need to make a separate object, right? So I'm going to go to create, polygon primitives, and I'm going to go to cylinder. I'm going to go to the options box for cylinder, right? Options box for cylinder. And in this case, I want on the y-axis, little kind of the stars will be on the top and bottom. We want that, so y-axis. But I don't want 20. That's a little too much, right? This is going to be in smooth preview. Remember, if you're working with smooth preview, you want your primitives to be simpler. The smooth preview is going to do a lot of the rounding for you. So in this case, I want to kind of have that good kind of even number that divides into an even number structure. So I'll pick 12, right? Because 12 is an even number, but if you divide it by 2, you divide it in half, right? It's 6, which is also an even number. So we'll create that. I'm going to turn symmetry off temporarily because symmetry, when we do some scaling, can do weird stuff. So I'll hit R for scale. Left click drag to scale this down a lot. Remember F for frame selection. W for move, I can move this up a bit. R for scale. Remember, the currently active one is that center one, so if you hold that middle mouse button, it'll just kind of scale that guy down. F for frame selection again, of course. R for scale. Now in this case, I want it to be a little less tall, so I can grab the green handle, left click drag on the scale tool. And now you can see we're getting this kind of nice little piece in here. Now I'm going to hit 3 for that to put it in smooth preview. And I want to maybe sharpen the top and bottom up a little bit, right? And we'll talk about this more as we go later on, but basically if you put an edge loop closer to another edge loop at a corner, it kind of makes the rounding that smooth preview does smaller, and it looks more like a sharp bevel. And we'll go into that even more in depth in later models. So I go to multi-cut, and if I hold down control and I put an edge loop, not exactly on the top here, but you know, not far off, so it comes a little boxier. Put an edge loop down here, and you see how those shapes actually get a little bit boxier, a little more like a bevel. In fact, if I hold down right mouse button and go to edge mode, and I double left click on an edge, If I move this down away from that corner, you see how the rounding becomes more soft? But if I move it up closer, you see how it becomes like harder? So if you actually move edge loops closer to other edge loops, particularly where there's a corner, what's happening is the smooth preview is still trying to do that rounding, but the rounding itself, the shape that it's rounding, is smaller. And so the rounding becomes tighter and more like a bevel, right? Kind of neat, right? So you can actually do some really great things with smooth preview if you really know how to work with it well. So just multi-cut to add in kind of 2 extra edge loops, and then you can just move them up or down a little bit to kind of sharpen the shape up a little more there. And what I want to do is I want to combine these together, right? So these will be seamless pieces. So I have to hold down right mouse button, go back to object mode, there we go. And I need to select both of these. So I'll hold down shift, right? And then I can click on the other one so that both are selected, right? I can always just do a left click drag box to select both of them. But I want the brace and this guy to be selected. Right now, they're separate objects. That means you can't merge or bridge anything on them, right? So if you're like, oh, my bridge tool won't work, make sure to check the combine, right? Don't skip ahead to these videos, watch them fully, follow by steps. If you need to pause right at that moment, pause, rewind. That's what's great about having these videos, right? For you to properly bridge these, which I'm going to show you in a minute, these need to be one object. Right now, they are not, right? They need to be one object. So you need to select both, right? Left click on one, shift left click on the other, they're both selected. And we've seen combine already a little bit, right? We've done that before, actually. And we're going to see it plenty more. Combine's quite useful. So we're going to see this one of those tools, we're going to see it many more times. So we combine, and now they're one object. See how when I click on one, it clicks on the other? They are one object. In fact, if you hold down right mouse button and go to face selection, you'll notice if I double click on a face, it selects only the connected ones. So even though they're one object, you can still kind of select them individually just by double clicking on a face. Remember, I showed that in a video earlier too. But you'll notice that combining them doesn't actually make them together. It makes them one object, but it doesn't make them bridged. It doesn't make them merged. So what we have to do is we have to select this face and this one and this one. And you can always turn symmetry on, right? If you need to, you can always go to World Symmetry. Select this face, shift left click, select that face, shift left click, shift left click. Now you notice I selected 2 faces to 2 faces. This is important in Maya. The bridge tool will not work on uneven numbers or different numbers, right? So if I had 3 faces and then another 3 faces that don't touch, right? See how they're kind of in different areas of the model, so they're not touching, they're not next to each other. If I had 3 faces and 3 faces, it could bridge. But if I have 4 to 2 or 2 to 3, it won't. So you have to have the same number to the same number, 2 to 2. And then what we can do is we can hit bridge, right below the extrude tool, bridge. And there we go. Now you might have a little bit of a bridge offset, which can twist it. So if you have a little twist like that, go down and play with the bridge offset a little bit, right? You might have to circle all the way back around, but there's a bridge offset. You can technically do divisions as well. Twist doesn't actually twist, right? It's kind of weird that way. Actually, I mean, it can, but it's a little bit unpredictable. Bridge offset for the longest time was how you did that. So I tend to rely on a little more on bridge offset, but basically they're kind of doing similar things. But that's what bridge does. And you see what bridge does is it takes whatever you have selected and it makes geometry in between there while not having anything in between anymore. Like all the stuff that's inside there is no longer there, right? So there will not be any geometry in there. See how it's hollow? That's the bridge tool. Think about how you could make a mug handle, right? Bridge, extrude out and then bridge it to connect it up. Bridge is one of those tools we're not going to use quite as much as extrude and multi-cut, but it is powerful and useful, right? So bridge is definitely one of the more power tools. Basically, if it's in modeling toolkit, it's usually used a good amount, right? That's why they're in modeling toolkit. So now we have not only more practice with combining stuff, but we even now know about the bridge tool and how that can allow you to kind of join stuff together. Now we have that cool little seamless piece there. Now in this case, I need a little knob up here for our spokes to rest on, so hold down right mouse button, face selection. Remember, tab for drag, select, right? And then I can just hold down my left mouse button, move, grab those. And I'm going to extrude, hit R for scale. Now in this case, you see how the symmetry is behaving weird? If you use your scale tool with symmetry on, it'll do weird stuff. So symmetry is awesome, but sometimes it is actually annoying, right? So let's reselect those so it'll be centered again. So generally, when you're working on something cylindrical like this and not this part, turn symmetry off. Then I can extrude W, move it up a little bit, extrude W, move it up a little bit, and then we have this kind of little knob on top that the spokes can go into. All right, so there we go, cool. That gives us the brace, right? And the last thing I want to do here for us really quickly is the spokes. Now, the spokes are pretty easy. There's not much shaping to them. But we are going to go to Create Polygon Primitives, Cylinder. I'm going to go to the Options box for Cylinder. And in this case, I want to make it on the X-axis, actually. I want it to be on its side. And 12 would be fine, but we want it X-axis. So this creates a big cylinder there. Now I'm going to hit R for scale, right? R for scale. And this is one of those instances where it's going to be a lot easier to scale this guy down by grabbing this red square. Because then if I drag, you'll see it kind of makes it much thinner that direction. And then of course we make it a little smaller there. I'll make it a little shorter there, move it up. Remember F for frame selection, move it over, move it down a little bit. And then maybe R for scale again, just to scale it down a little more. There we go. And you see we've made a spoke. Now in this case, I'm going to turn my isolate select off so I can see the lampshade, because you can kind of see it maybe needs to be a little longer. So we'll scale it out a little more, move it out a little bit more. If need be, you can always hold down right mouse button to go to vertex mode and just grab these end vertices and just move those guys out to make sure they touch, right? Remember, more than you can lengthen things by selecting just certain parts of it and moving instead of scaling. But you'll notice I wanted basically a long cylinder, a long thin cylinder on its side to go from this part to the lampshade. Now, this is going to show us another new thing. Two new things, actually. One is our ability to edit pivot, right? So my move tool's on, and you'll see in Modeling Toolkit kind of at the bottom here is the world settings, and that's fine, world's fine. But there's something called edit pivot. I click on edit pivot, and you'll notice what I can do is I can actually move this, I can rotate it, I can even click on an edge and it aligns to that. Of course, I can kind of click off to reset it. But with edit pivot on, what I can do is I can move this to the center. And I'm actually going to turn that off for the moment. Maybe do a quick modify center pivot just to kind of make sure it's back to default. Usually in edit pivot, you can actually clear it. Right now I'm not seeing the quick key for it though, or the shortcut. But edit pivot, and this gives you the ability, like we said, to kind of rotate it, to move it. Now in this case though, I want to snap this to the center of the world, right? So edit pivot lets you move the manipulator itself without moving the object, right? See how it's not moving the object? Well, I want to snap it to the center of the world. And you'll notice that these magnets at top here, right? And the very first magnet is snap to grid. And we'll see some more of these snapping tools as we go along also, right? So more of these are going to show up as we do more work. But the very first magnet is snap to grid. And what this will do is it will allow you to snap to the grid, right? So see how it's actually snapping to the grid units. Now what's great about that is that since we've been working on the zero of the world, that's one of the reasons why we like working on the zero, right? The origin of the world, the 0, 0, 0 for the X, Y, and Z axis, is that in instances like this, it makes it really easy to get this centered and know it's perfectly centered. So edit pivot allows you to move your pivot point wherever you need to, right? The actual manipulator, without moving the object. And snap to grid, the very first magnets, allows you to snap to the grid units. And now you'll see that that's in the center, so if I was to rotate it, see how it rotates from there? Kind of neat, right? Now, in this case, I want to copy this around for the spokes. So I go to Edit, and instead of Duplicate, I go to Duplicate Special, right below it. And you notice it's got an Options box. And in that Options box, we have the ability to do Copy or Instance. Instance will make it so that whatever you do to the original, or really any one of them, will happen to the rest of them. So you might want that on, you might not. In this case, since it's a simple spoke, copy will just work fine. that just does normal copies. World group is fine. And you'll notice that I've got some stuff from last time I did anything in here. But you'll notice you can actually translate this, rotate it, or scale it. So if I was to do rotations and translates, we could actually turn this into a spiral staircase, right? In this case, we don't, right? We want the scales all set to 1. We want the translates all set to 0. However, I want a total of 8 spokes. So I've already got the first one, so I don't need 8, I need 7 copies, right? So I type in 7 for the number of copies because I want a total of 8. I've already got the first one. So it's always 1 less than the actual total number you want. Now in this case, we want to rotate it along this axis, which is our y. And it doesn't say in here, but this first row is x, this middle row is y, this last row is z, just like they are in the alphabet, x, y, z. So just think of like the alphabet, x, y, z. So I want to go to rotate for the y-axis right here. And 360 divided by 8 is 45. Now if you only wanted 6 copies, right, 6 total, right? 360 divided by 6, that'd be 60. If you only wanted 4 spokes, right? 360 divided by 4, 90. So you kind of figure out the total number you want and divide that by 360, because that's the full circle, and that's what you should put in the rotate. In this case, 45 for 45 degrees, and there's our spokes. And we're going to see this a couple more times, right? We got wheels on our chair, we've got a ceiling fan we're going to make. So we're going to get to see duplicate special with that a couple more times, edit pivot many more times. But now we've got a lot of the lamp done. Not quite all of it, right? So like I said, we have the cord and the switch to do, but I'm already running a little bit longer on this video. But there we go. So that'll be a great place to stop.